Cal, how do you take?
I have catch basin in my neighborhood. That's not connected. It's just some.
Oh, yeah. I got such a big.
Yeah, that was a good one. So I got out of my car and there I was.
That's why I voted for you, Mr. Mayor.
I pulled the grate off and then I dropped
yeah.
down in the catch basin.
It's all by yourself.
There's that stormwater tech in Ellensburg that
Okay,
that
all right.
died.
Thank you.
Inspected catch basins years ago. Remember that? He pulled the lid off without doing catch basin inspections and he stuck his head down there and he fell in first. They found this.
I go by
Now,
right.
hours later.
Oh.
That's crazy. Crazy. So, small town.
Other times there.
We got one guy.
Good evening. Welcome to the council meeting, December 5th, 2023. Anyone in the audience needs any amplifying headphones, please raise your hand. All staff there, so guess not. Let's rise for the pledge, please. Pledge of allegiance to the flag
And the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Donna, can you do a roll call, please?
I will. Councilmember Bode,
Here.
Councilmember Sherman.
Here.
Councilmember Gutierrez,
Here.
Mayor Nesco.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Schmidt.
Here.
Councilmember McDowell
Present.
and Councilmember Peterson.
Here.
Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
Council have any late changes to the agenda? City manager.
Nothing tonight, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Council have any board reports to share? All right. Has everyone reviewed the items on the consent agenda? Have a motion.
Move to approve the consent agenda as published.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as published. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, first business item is Finance Director Mike Givens. This information forwarded by the 2023 budget supplemental.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of council. I'm back before you with the budget. So this, for members of the public and council, this is really what I would call a cleanup supplemental budget process. I know it appears a little bit daunting when you look at all of the items listed. And so I want to clarify, as I put in the briefing, we budget for an expenditure authority. We don't always know when we're going to receive certain grants, how much certain projects are going to be. And so what we're doing here is cleaning up the budget authority so that as we're ending the fiscal year, the budget is in line with what council has approved for us to spend in certain funds. We also have encountered some situations where things changed. As you know, council set capital budgeting up a few years ago. And so when we make that original adoption of the fiscal year budget, we set up that we're going to move certain amounts into the capital budgets for those projects. And sometimes being good stewards, Public Works in particular, are planning for projects over a couple of years to get the monies, the funds together. Things change. And so in a couple of instances, we are deobligating some of those funds. That gives us your official authority to take that money back into the operating budgets where then they can be used in other ways. And it's not always that the projects aren't happening. Sometimes they're happening through different funding mechanisms that we've encountered. So it could be that we got grants in some cases to fund in different ways. One of the bigger examples on this is the solid waste fund. And I know you're aware of that, but I do want to say for the record, we're increasing the budget authority on that now that we know the final number. So we could have brought you a piece of it in June when we did a supplemental, but we knew it was ongoing. I want to point out that we received a good amount of revenue and reimbursement from Department of Ecology, who partnered with us on that cleanup. And when I say the solid waste fund, that's the C Street landfill cleanup. And so that's a large item, just over $914,000. The rest of the items are, some of them are very small. The $119 that we're asking for additional budget authority for that cargo van. I broke them down so that that amount appeared. We wanted to be transparent. The amounts for the parks trucks, we waited until we actually got the invoices, paid for them, so we knew exactly how much. We had an idea that those prices were going to increase, but until we actually received the vehicles and the invoice, we wanted to clean that up now. I mentioned some of the obligation of funds that we're asking you to process through this. But that's the supplemental we're bringing you. Again, it's cleaning up to make sure our budget authority is in line as we round out the fiscal year. So we're really not asking for any reductions of any kind in staffing or anything like that, like we did with the first supplemental. This is purely to clean up primarily our capital fund budgeting.
Thank you, Mike. Jonathan, anyone set up public comment?
No, they haven't, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Anyone in the audience like to speak on this? Any staff members? Okay. Can we read an ordinance number 2015-1023?
Ordinance number 2015-1023. An ordinance of the city of Shelton, Washington, amending the annual budget for the year ending December 31st, 2023.
Thank you, Donna. Comments or questions? Or motion, excuse me.
Mr. Mayor, I move to forward ordinance number 2015-1023 to the December 19th council action agenda for further consideration.
Second.
All right, comments or questions? All right. We have a motion and a second to forward ordinance number 2015-1023 to the December 19th city council meeting for further consideration. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mike. We have an ordinance related to low impact development principles and facilities. Public Works Stormwater Technician Kenny Oberg has details for us.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. So the first thing that comes to mind is what exactly is low impact development? I'm sure the term has been thrown around and heard by a few of you, but even the definition itself that's provided to us by ecology is somewhat confusing with what it has inside of it. This all pertains to more like a holistic approach to new and possibly redevelopment, depending on the case. And it's just a way to mimic pre-disturbance of the site in the best way possible when it's feasible. So, next slide, please. Just a little overview of the presentation. I'll have a couple of slides where we can kind of go into the different portions of low impact development. Just while we go through those, keep in mind that it's all in one encompassing, I guess, practice would be the best way to put this, or an approach to development. We'll touch on the permit requirements. That is our phase 2 stormwater permit requirements administered to us from ecology. And then the actual project itself that we had to go through to meet said permit requirements. And that was a complete review of our Shelton Municipal Code as it exists. And the whole point of that was to eliminate barriers to implementing and requiring certain LID principles and BMPs. And BMPs are best management practices when it's related to stormwater and site development. And then at the end, we'll have a little bit of time for questions if they do arise. Next slide. So this is a nice definition of low impact development. And actually, when I found this, it had a little note on it that said it took ecology and stakeholders 2 years to come up with this. So I am going to read it, and we'll see how it goes for that. Low impact development, LID, is a stormwater and land use management strategy that strives to mimic pre-disturbance hydrologic processes of infiltration, filtration, storage, evaporation, and transpiration by emphasizing conservation, use of on-site natural features, site planning, and distributed stormwater management practices that are integrated into a project design. So that right there, it covers the initial design, the site exploration, this taking in all facets of site development into one thing, and you start at the beginning instead of, when I came to you guys last year with the source control inspection stuff. That whole program, that was for existing development, and that's kind of a retroactive fix, I guess you could say, to stormwater issues that were set in stone when that site was developed and as we developed as a city. This is catching all that beforehand, and it's a proactive approach to make sure that as development continues in the future, it's designed from the beginning to help stormwater and keep our surrounding waters clean and free, mostly free of pollutants. Next slide, please. So this portion of low impact development, a lot of it comes down to the BMP's best management practices, or this slide in particular focuses more on the actual facilities. What you're looking at there is a bioretention facility for a parking lot and also portions of the road. To touch on that picture, because it does look so nice, that actually plays a huge part. It's similar to what we have on 8th Street in our rain garden. Similar concepts applied to it. It doesn't work quite the same, but essentially it captures that stormwater, slows it down, holds it within the cell, and that infiltrates most of it, unless you have maybe a storm like this. And it holds on to those pollutants and allows the water to infiltrate, gives it time to do that. And it's also aesthetically pleasing, which is a good thing for most developers. Main purpose of lid facilities in a whole site design is to kind of go away from the traditional management of stormwater, which is you get the stormwater off the road, off the impervious surfaces as fast as you can, you get it to one big pond, or if you are able to discharge into a water body, and you get it off as soon as you can, as fast as you can. What that does is create high peak flows during storm events. And it also, depending on the site, can lead to one point of failure. So if your pond gives out, your piping structures get clogged, anything like that, or commonly catch basins. Low impact development takes those same principles, adds in a little more treatment, and also disperses that. So it keeps the flows having to travel so far. It eliminates the peak flow during a storm event because you take that one large, say, detention pond and you spread that out with different lid facilities and BMPs throughout your site and in your initial site design to eliminate that one large point of failure. And by doing that, it usually can last longer and can, in some cases, actually reduce the cost of construction of the site because you're utilizing the existing topography as much as you can. You're retaining native vegetation with this system. And it usually can increase open space. Some of our recommended code changes or additions do allow for utilization of lid BMPs and facilities and also meeting the requirement for open space for development, which is kind of a two birds with one stone thing. It works well. Next slide, please. So again, the key principles I want you to take away from this is it's an overall strategy to site development. It doesn't just focus on construction or site planning, it takes in everything. So when you develop a site, you know, this is day to day for me, so it doesn't seem like anything new, but you look at the topography, the soils of the site, that's a very important one because a lot of low impact development facilities utilize infiltration, which is not always feasible because of soil conditions of the site. So that's something that when you initially have site planning, you want to make sure that that's a possibility within your site or portions of your site. And then you also have hydrology, you know, seasonal high groundwater tables, on-site runoff from different sites if it's downstream. I'm trying not to get too down in the weeds here. And then you also have to take in account what's surrounding the site, the zoning requirements, access, and how you will be able to access, what possibilities are for access. And then, of course, you know, what the rest of what goes into a site design. But all of that is encompassed in that site analysis portion of the low impact development approach. Next slide, please. So I've already kind of touched on this, but these are the key points. Just comparing, you know, traditional stormwater management to what lid practices enable. It's, again, separating out that large one stormwater facility, or if you have multiples, they're still usually quite large. They take up a large amount of space. And most of the time, they're quite costly to construct. Lid practices, it can get even as small as what we commonly require here, if it's feasible, is downspout infiltration. So your roof water goes in your catch basin in your yard, and it's like a mini drain field for your roof water. But if you multiply that over a 200 lot development, that cuts off a huge amount of flow that traditionally would get piped into the stormwater system within the road, and then you have to have that in a detention pond or treatment facility. So it really emphasizes spreading out the management of stormwater, even down to a lot basis. Next slide, please. So this would be an example of a conventional stormwater detention pond. And this is still common, you know, if infiltration on site is not possible, there's only so many things you can do with all the water that's going to come off. And, you know, these still meet the basic treatment requirements of settling out contaminants. And then, of course, some of these lid practices and principles are already integrated into our code. When we adopted the 2019 Stormwater Management Manual for Western Washington, that went along with it, were those minimum requirements. And a lot of those minimum requirements meet the lid approach to constructing a site. So it's already part of our code, but what we did in this project was, again, try to eliminate barriers that would inhibit us from implementing this, and in some cases making a requirement. And I know when some people hear requirement, it makes them kind of run away a little bit, because usually that means it's expensive and you have to do it no matter what. And that is not the case with this. If it's feasible, meaning economically, in most cases, sometimes people will push back on the economic part, but if it's feasible, meaning your site has a topography, the soil drainage capabilities and everything else, then that's when it's a requirement. We're not going to try to ask somebody to do the impossible and engineer a way to infiltrate on soil that just holds water like a lake. Next slide, please. These are just a few examples. One of them, as you know, is local, and that's the MTA parking lot. I also want to reference the city parking lot that was in a different slide. But that right there, it cuts down on the amount of stormwater that is built up and has to be dealt with. It infiltrates the stormwater on site. You don't have to treat the stormwater because it's getting filtered through the ground. And it can even go as far as something very simplistic, like the top right picture. That is a vegetated filter strip. Most people, this looks like a grassy knoll off of a road, but that right there actually cuts down on the amount of pollutants that are in stormwater, especially from road runoff. And it actually cuts down quite a bit on the pollutants that would enter a wetland or a stream, or just a conventional storm system have to be treated in other ways. It can get to the point where it's even smaller, even individual lots, if they're infiltrating their roof downspout water in an infiltration gallery, they can have a rain garden on site to catch the sheet flow that would go onto their site and hold that and keep it from entering the roadway and getting pollutants absorbed in it that way as well.
What's the upper left? other than
Upper
really
left
fancy
is a very ornate version of a roadside swale / bioretention swale.
Got it.
Those do not have to look like that. Most of the time, they're just a grass line channel, maybe with some sedges and rushes in it. Particularly something that is drought tolerant, especially for us. But that is a awesome example of it, so I wanted to put that in there because it looks very nice as well. Another note I wanted to add, these changes in the code, you know, this isn't a one and done deal. As technology improves, what's considered feasible and possible will of course change with that improvement in technology and what we know we can and can't do. So along with that, you know, this, I'm sure I'll see you guys again at some point in the future for updating some other portion of the code. And again, we're adapting and changing our standards as time goes on with these improvements in technology. It wasn't part of this project, it was already done, but our reduction in road width for local residential roads in particular. That is 32 feet now face to face or face of curb to face of curb. But just that reduction in width of that road multiplied over miles and miles of these new roads that will be constructed at some point adds up to a lot of reduction in impervious surfaces, which then cuts down the amount of stormwater that we have to deal with. It's just taken care of by not having such a wide road. As far as our permit requirements go, this is an ongoing requirement, especially the top bullet point there. And that is at a minimum to annually assess how the implementation of LID BMPs and principles is actually working for developers or city staff, for all parties involved. As you continue on, you'll have a certain occurrence where you're going to catch something like, ooh, that isn't going to really work because of this code section and the way it relates to this other section or in our standards manual. So it's a continual process. It's like a living process of how we're going to keep on top of this, and it'll of course change with time. The middle bullet point was the permit requirement specifically for this project. And that was a complete review of our code and incorporation of certain abilities, or at least allowed by the code, to implement low impact development within site development or redevelopment. And of course, the last two words are where feasible. Again, we're not going to make people do something that's impossible. It's going to be, if you can, it should be done this way, which is the way. The overall intent of this, short of the permit requirements, is to make the low impact development the preferred and commonly used approach. So we don't want to have to constantly remind developers at some point when we have this in our standards, in our code, it'll just be the way that we know we have to do it from the developer standpoint. Which is good, because other than, what's required by ecology, the way this works and the end result of low impact development actually benefits everybody, not just within the development, but everyone that lives around it and works around it. And it is good for the overall health of our community as well. Just cuts down on the pollutants that enter our streams and lakes and water bodies. So this isn't everything that was changed in the code. Again, if you went through it, it's not a whole lot of changes. It's more of additions or changing a few little aspects of wording within existing code sections. But it's a general overview is just making it the preferred approach and making low impact development, say, best management practices and principles, and that approach integrated into the way it's integrated into our codes and our standards, so it doesn't become a roadblock. We have a certain standard that didn't allow for planter strips on a roadside. That's the kind of thing, those big hitter items that they're important, they need to be in there, but that's actually a low impact development. That's my practice. Next slide, please. That's all I have for you.
All right.
Questions?
Donna, has anyone signed up for public comment?
No, we don't, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone on Zoom would like to speak?
No, sir.
All right, may I have a reading of ordinance number 2017-1123.
Ordinance number 2017-1123. An ordinance of the city of Shelton, Washington, amending the Shelton Municipal Code related to low impact development principles and facilities.
Thank you, Donna. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move forward ordinance number 2017-1123 to the December 19th City Council meeting for further consideration.
Second.
All right, comments or questions?
Question.
The mayor.
Inspection and insurance that once this is constructed, that it's being maintained. How do we go about that?
You asked that question primarily because I can answer it.
Sweet.
Under new development, a part of the final certificate of occupancy or final city acceptance is a stormwater facility maintenance agreement. And that's the private stormwater facility maintenance agreement. So if it is part of a private system, then that has to be recorded with the land. Doesn't matter if it's sold or bought by anybody else, it stays with the land and with the facilities. And that has to be reviewed and approved by us, has to be put together by the engineer or an engineer hired by the developer. And it has mechanisms in place to ensure that it is properly operated and maintained. It has specific O&M manuals that go along with the facility and what it is. And there's also mechanisms within that agreement. So if it does become an issue and they're not maintaining it properly, or, you know, if it was an HOA that had to maintain this facility in development, the HOA was dissolved, no one's maintaining it, we can actually go in, do the maintenance or the repairs that are needed, and then it actually gets billed out to them. So it's a strong incentive to keep up on your operations and maintenance of this. And that goes along with every private stormwater facility that's installed with new development.
So my follow-up to that then is how do we communicate, how are we kind of doing the public outreach? I think we had a grant a few years back when we were starting the phase 2 implementation. Is there still money? Do we need to think about?
What a great segue.
Public education.
Next presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, public education outreach is a very large and time-consuming permit requirement that that we have to do under this phase 2 stormwater permit. And that is we do receive an biannual grant from Ecology. It's a non-competitive, no city match grant fund. And that is primarily how we fund the Mason Conservation District, and they're taking care of our permit requirements for public education outreach.
I just wanted to express my happiness that we're including best management practices in the low income, low development area. And we are located on top of active salmon and trout streams. So it's super important that we keep the water clean, not just for them, but for also the oysters and shellfish in the bay and all the ones we consume during Oyster Fest. So I just want to congratulate us as a city to keep best management practices up to date and always into the low income development. So thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, we have a motion and a second for ordinance number 2017-1123 to the December 19th city council meeting for further consideration. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, public hearing is closed. Back to our regular meeting. We have another item from Kenny.
As I said, Councilmember Smith, what a great segue to my next presentation. This is just a presentation to have our capacity grant from Ecology, the stormwater capacity grant, accepted by the city. It has an effective date of July 1st of 2023, even though we didn't get the funding agreement until November 16th of this year. Any expenses that were accrued that are eligible for that grant can be reimbursed 100% with it. This grant, I think the last cycle, we got 70,000 for the biennium. And there was an amendment and increase there. This year, they started us at 130,000, and it's a non-city match grant. So.
All right. No, anyone have public comment? Or were you done? I'm sorry.
No, that's good.
You paused for a good 30 seconds.
No, we don't, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Anyone in the audience would like to speak or on Zoom? All right, do I have a motion?
Mayor, moving forward resolution number 1302-1123 to December 19th, 2023, city council meeting for further consideration.
Second.
All right, comments or questions? All right,
Yeah.
Thank you.
thank you. We have a motion and a second to forward resolution number 1302-1123 to December 19th, 2023, city council meeting for further consideration. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Capital Project Manager Aaron Nix has information for us about Well One project.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor and Council. Thank you guys for having me again. I bring forward to you what we're calling amendment number 4. This is relevant to the well number 1 project with regard to the one that we just recently awarded. We got the signed contract back today, so we're getting ready to ramp this up and get the pre-con going to construct that. I obviously need to come before you with regard to an ask for additional funds. I will say immediately, we have the budget covered for not only the construction of this, but also the other project management work, those types of things. All of that has been identified and we have it ready available. I kind of included a breakdown for you guys on the briefing. If you want to take a look at that real quickly with regard to the costs associated with this project. I just kind of wanted to go over those a little bit with you and provide some additional comment. You'll see at least design and permitting identified, and that was done earlier. Previous contract, we were almost done with those monies. That was for obviously design and permitting of $247,940. The ask that I'm coming forward to you tonight under this amendment number 4 is for construction management services during construction. And that's that $289,860 for that project for a cumulative. And I want, you guys are probably saying, Aaron, my God, how much money are we paying consultants for these types of projects? I agree with you. But candidly, that's pretty average, believe it or not. If you look at the numbers, 20% is pretty much the average, at least identified for design and construction management. There's the table right there for you guys. But, and I would offer to the council, Jay and I have been, and Brent and everybody have been discussing this. I actually have some construction management experience and background. I'm not saying we're immediately going to move over to this, but we'd like to do, and there may be some future asks for maybe an inspector or something, with the notion that we could cut some of that money that we're paying towards these consultants and taking it in-house and actually managing the construction of those. So I'm not saying we're going to do that, but I think that's an option for us. It will definitely save us some money. I mean, $289,000, that's a generator or two for us. So, and I understand, I really do. And these are things that every jurisdiction fights with you guys. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. Let me see. Grain Osborne, they obviously have the proposal. Also, I don't know if folks know, we had a gentleman that worked here, and I don't know, is it Roper Clint? He worked for us for a long time. He actually works for Grain Osborne. He's actually, and the reason why we're suggesting that we move forward with this from a staff perspective is this is a fairly technical project. The water system, as well as the piping and those kinds of things are fairly complicated. So I will offer and give the council that I will be not necessarily, Jay has me kind of running around. I'm trying to put a bunch of different projects, but I'm going to be involved in this to kind of oversee Grain Osborne to ensure that indeed whatever they've estimated is real. And that's just kind of a QA/QC on our part, try to deal with that to hopefully bring some of those costs down. So really, that's all I have for this presentation for you guys. I'm just looking to add this to the action agenda. Again, we'll be setting the pre-con here shortly, and the hope is by mid-January, we will be constructing. So any questions, concerns?
Anyone set up public comment?
No, Mr.
All
Mayor.
right. Anybody on Zoom?
No, sir.
Do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, move to place amendment number 4 to the design construction management contract with Gary and Osborne and Company Incorporated for well number 1 pipeline preservation project, the action agenda for the December 19th council meeting.
Thank you. Comments or questions?
Just a comment that if we don't have the internal workforce to do it, we have to farm it out. Especially if we're utilizing grant funds, we have expectations to perform. Taking additional risk, not interested. So I'm a supporter of bringing on the consultants for this. I understand the cost being what it is, but until we have the revenues to support adding depth and at City Hall, this is just a necessary thing we're gonna have to do.
I
So
appreciate that.
appreciate the effort. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. And council, I will tell you that, and I think I mentioned this too at my last presentation, we are gonna try to in-house manage the Safe Routes to Schools project. That's really straightforward. Amy, our senior inspector, will be managing that. Obviously, we've been working together on that, but that's just to save some money as well, because that project is really tight. So
Any other comments? We have a motion, a second to place amendment number 4 to the design construction management contract for Gray and Osborne Incorporated for the well one pipeline pressurization project to the action agenda for December 19th council meeting. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion carries.
thank
We
you.
talked about these long motions.
Jay Harrison
Yeah.
doesn't intentionally, you know.
Yeah, it's got a big old card. I got a mistake preservation project.
Next on the agenda is the contract for city prosecution services. City manager Mark Ziegler has
Thank
information.
you, Mr. Mayor, council members. As the council's aware, our current contract prosecutor provided a notice of termination back in August of this year. Staff released a request for proposals for prosecutorial services through our normal means, as well as through local bar associations throughout the Southwest Washington, Western Washington. We were only in receipt of one proposal. That was from Gunderson Law Firm. City staff interviewed Gunderson Law Firm after the RFP, and we were pleasantly surprised with the result of that interview and happy with the services they can offer to the city of Shelton. They're providing those services to a couple other communities such as Lakewood, Ruston, and Black Diamond. So tonight is a draft contract with Gunderson Law Firm for contract prosecutorial services. The contract is for $10,000 per month for the complete docket on a monthly basis, and then $500 for each day for any staff training, with our police department to, develop, I guess, case development and things like that. The current contract is an hourly rate with Young Glove and Coker at about, I think it's at $250 an hour, and our average bill each month is about $12,000. So we'd actually see a savings, based on similar court cases, at least counts. So it's actually, I hope, results in a savings to the city in at least the near future.
Don, anyone set up a public comment?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone in the audience like to speak on this? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to place resolution number 1303-1123 on December 19th, 2023 council action agenda for consideration.
Okay.
All right, comments or
Miss-
questions?
Mr.
Point of
Mayor.
order, that's the.
Yep, Mr. Mayor, that's the next.
That's the next item on the
oh.
agenda.
thing. So this is the prosecutorial
Being paid-
contract for prosecutorial services.
Page
Gunnison Law
156.
Firm.
Yeah.
Move to place the contract for prosecuting services for Gunnison Law Firm on the December 19th, 2023 action agenda.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I didn't catch who the second was on that one. Thank you, Joe.
Oh, glad to, but,
Sharon, Sharon said it.
all right. Comments or questions?
Question.
Yes.
So going to a flat rate versus an hourly rate, I mean, I don't wanna really. I don't know, but concerns that willingness to prosecute.
Yeah, and that was certainly a large part of our interview with the firm. And I think that as this is a firm that specializes in prosecutorial services, they demonstrated that is what they do every day essentially, and they're not practicing other forms of law. So the court administrator, police captain, city clerk, HR manager, and myself were comfortable with the responses we got from the firm, and certainly have the ability to terminate the contract at a later date if they're not meeting the objectives of the contract. As you know, we had one response to the RFP. We've had little luck in the past, frankly. So it may behoove us in the future to have more conversations with Mason County, local jurisdictions on how maybe we can combine some services and pool our resources to come up with more appropriate services and better services here. But at this point, this is my recommendation in order to move forward with prosecutorial services effective January 1.
Perhaps it'd be a good idea to check in 6 months or so to see how it's going and
Certainly.
let us know.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
All right. Any other comments, questions? All right, we have a motion and a second to place the contract with prosecution services on the December 19th, 2023 action agenda for further consideration. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Another item from Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bringing forward tonight a grant acceptance, grant agreement from the Office of Public Defense for fiscal years 2024 and 2025 in the amount of $78,000. Be $39,000 in 24 and 39 and 25 distributed to the city. The grant will offset indigent public defense costs in the city's municipal court. This has been a grant program, at least it was in place last couple of years. I'm not sure before that as well. They actually, court administrator and a judge worked on this grant application previously. And we actually asked for more money than this and did not receive that, unfortunately. We're hoping to offset some of the staffing costs with administration of municipal court, but we're not successful in the portion of the grant. But I want to thank our municipal court staff anyway for their time and efforts in applying for this grant and successfully awarding that from Office of Public Defense.
All right, Don, anyone have a public comment?
No, we don't, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we have a motion.
Mr. Mayor, now I move to place resolution number 1303-1123 at December 19th, 2023 council action agenda for further consideration.
Comments or questions?
No.
All right, we have a motion and a second to place resolution number 1303-1123 on December 19th, 2023 council action agenda for further consideration. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion carries. All right, ooh, back to Mark.
Yeah, we're gonna go to stay with the defense portion of support here. So you have in front of you tonight the contract for indigent public defense, the municipal court. This contract is for the Sound Defenders. Tashner and Associates has been the contract public defender for the municipal court since 2008. This is a renegotiated and updated contract after a couple amendments have been completed over the years. This is kind of a cleanup of the contract and a renegotiation of the actual cost to provide the service as those haven't really kept up with inflation over time. So no changes have been made to the contract since the briefing on November 21st.
All right, thank you, Mark. Donna, public comments?
No, we don't.
All right, do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the contract for indigent defense services as presented.
Second.
All right, comments or questions? Nope. Good job of getting a little bit, I guess a little bit better than that. We have a motion and a second to approve the contract for indigent defense services as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Mark, it's a Mark show tonight.
That's right. Taking it down here tonight. In front of you is the city's 2024 legislative agenda. Again, no changes have been made since the briefing on November 21st. I will comment though, this Friday, the legislative send-off with our representatives will be held out at Alderbrook, and so we'll be attending that to make sure that our delegation here's our priorities and is, you know, is, I guess, current with the city's needs.
All right, thank you, Mark. Donna, anyone have public comment?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Maybe I'm reading a resolution number 1300-1123.
Resolution number 1300-1123. A resolution of the city of Shelton, Washington, establishing the 2024 legislative agenda.
Thank you, Donna. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 1300-1123, establishing the city's 2024 legislative agenda.
Comments or questions? All right, we have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 1300-1123, establishing the city's 2024 legislative agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Hey, somebody different. Hey, Jay. The last item is letter of support for a grant, Community Economic Development Director Jay Hill.
Mayor, Council, thank you. So last year, the legislature passed House Bill 1181, which required the addition of a new element to comprehensive plans related to climate mitigation and resiliency. So we're looking for hazard mitigation. Larger communities are going to be doing vehicle miles trip reduction and greenhouse gas reduction and things like that. We get to skip those, but we're going to focus more on kind of like natural disasters, things that we know happen here, flooding, fires, drought, things like that, that we need to be planning for. So the state non-competitively allocated $150,000 to our community. We still had to apply for it. And one of the application requirements was a letter of support. We already made the application. They let us submit the application without having the letter. We got it on the agenda as quickly as we could to get this signed, and then we'll submit this along to the state. So this is work that it's going to augment our existing comprehensive plan allocations from the city budget and from the money that we got from Department of Commerce to work on this too. So our plan is to increase the scope of the contract with our comp plan consultant, SCJ, and have them kind of integrate this work into what we're doing. One of the requirements of the bill is that it kind of needs to look at it holistically. We're not just creating an element, but those policies need to kind of cross-reference throughout the plan as well. So that is our plan. And with that, we're just asking for the council to approve the mayor signing the letter of support for the climate mitigation and resilience grant funding.
Thank you, Jay. Donna, anyone have a public comment?
No, we don't, Mr. Mayor.
Right, do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that you sign the letter of support for the climate resilience grant funding opportunity and to waive the three touch rule.
Second. All right, comments or questions? All right, we have a
Sign that letter.
all right, we have a motion and a second to have me sign the letter of support for the climate resilience grant funding opportunity and waive the three touch rule. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Back to Mark for city manager
All right,
report.
thank you. Short, but the theme is volunteerism. I think as we were all out in the main room of the Civic Center this afternoon, we had 30-some individuals that have given their time and efforts to the city over the past year. We want to thank them and recognize them. Obviously, didn't capture the 120 or so individuals that have given their time to the city and the community through volunteerism and adopting a park or a advisory committee. And we've calculated that if you calculate it minimum wage, at almost $12,000 in their contributions to our community. So we took the opportunity to thank those individuals and hopefully encourage more volunteerism in our community. And sticking with that theme, as I said, this past weekend and the holiday magic and the tree lighting and the parade really truly shows how important volunteerism is in our community. The amount of people that showed up, particularly Saturdays. Friday probably wasn't as busy as it could have been, but it was wet. Take my word for it, it was wet. But it was still a great event. We had a lot of folks at the tree lighting and the kids caroling, and then moving through the community. We had great reports from downtown businesses on the activities down there. So there's too many people involved to really thank, right? But we want to recognize just the events and the activities, and they're ongoing throughout this month and Christmas, and the tree mazes next door. And if you saw the tree maze by any chance, you might not have seen me because the lines over there after the parade was tremendous. How many people were milling around downtown and taking advantage of the activities down here. So it was really nice to see. The other volunteer project that's coming up this weekend is the installation of the playground at North Cliff Neighborhood Park. That project will actually take place on the 7th and 8th with city staff and a contractor, and then a volunteer effort on Saturday to finish up the playground. As well, it probably won't be open right away, particularly with this weather. We'll have some restoration to do on site to blade out some of the ruts and things like that and let concrete cure. But it's a great project, monumental, I think, project for the North Cliff neighborhood, and having a neighborhood park start to be developed up there after that property being dedicated for park uses back in the 70s. We're trying to meet the Parks and Recreation Comprehensive Plans action steps, and that is to provide neighborhood parks throughout our community, and that standard is half-mile service radius. So one more step in that positive direction. I want to thank the donors, our local Kiwanis clubs, Christmastown and Shelton Kiwanis, that donated to that, and Sierra Pacific Industries, Squax Island Drive, a number of individuals. Mr. Mayor, thank you as well. That offset the cost of that project and made it a possibility, and why we're doing that this weekend. So again, that's a theme of my report today, is the volunteerism in our community, and how important it is to making this a great place to live. So that's all I have for you tonight.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Anyone have any questions for Mark?
If there's anything that Leslie Note taught me, is that this is a really big deal. So congrats.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is cool. It's to see it come to fruition now and build a park.
Absolutely.
How many parks have you been able to build in Shelton in your career?
I mean, from scratch, really,
Right.
really none, right? Yeah, we've
This is a big
renovated.
deal.
Yeah, we've been involved in renovating Callahan, Eland Park specifically, and a couple trails and things like that. But yeah, this is kind of the first one in 30 years, if you will.
Yeah.
Right? It's as I said, monumental.
Congrats. That's awesome.
All right, it is exciting. That is my neighborhood, so I'm excited for that. Hey, Mark, a couple weeks ago, we had a swearing in for Chief Costad and Sergeant Patton, or Captain Patton, excuse me.
Yeah.
And we missed an opportunity because there were so many people here to talk about some accreditations. Did you want to talk about that at all?
We mentioned it a few times. I think Chief, through the accreditation process, would you like an update on that process? I'm sure he'd be happy to.
Yeah.
To take a few moments. Unplanned.
No worries. I had the opportunity to go to the WASPIC conference the beginning of November, where got to present our accreditation to the board there. It's a very diverse program where it covers over 145 different chapters with the police department, and it ranges from training to records keeping to how we're onboarding people and just various aspects of the police department. And it was extremely a lot of work for the police department, not to include myself, but the records department was absolutely fantabulous. So on this, my sergeants all contributed to the process as well. It was over a year's work to get that complete, and I'm just very proud of them all. I'm glad to say that in this accreditation process this year that we were successful, and we are good to go for another 4 years. And we just look forward to serving the community as best as we can and maintaining best practices as possible.
Thank you.
And one thing the chief left out, we're eligible for grant funding because of our
Yes.
accreditation process. So the chief has
Correct.
applied for a
That is a
$50,000 grant.
brand new program that just came out this year through WASPIC, being that we are reaccredited. There is $1 million out there for grabs. So I already put in the grant request for that. I don't know how much that is going to be allocated towards us. But there's no restrictions on that. We can use that money for whatever we want.
Oh, wow.
Great. Great
Yeah,
job.
right.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's my short time in this position and working with then captain and chief and understanding the accreditation process and the work that's put into it. It's amazing. They when they came and did a personal inspection of the police department, actually the evidence room they checked a fan, an exhaust fan within that evidence room, and it wasn't functioning properly and pointed out, and we had to have that fixed prior to his presentation at the WASPIT conference. That's how detailed this is. That's the fine tooth comb that they come out here and ensure that best practices are being practiced within the police department. So I think it's a credit to the chief and his staff over there that they're able to meet the stringent requirements of the accreditation process.
Thank you.
Excellent.
All right.
Yeah, good call.
Public comment time. Donna, anyone on Zoom that'd like to speak in public comment?
I don't see anyone with their hand raised, but let's give them just a minute.
No, there is no public comment, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Council have any new items for discussion? All right, our next meeting is Tuesday, December 19th at 6 p.m. We also have study session December 12th